Alright, welcome back to my Legendary build series. I am doing the last mission of the Witch Queen solo flawless on Legendary. This is part 15 of 16 in the Legendary build series that I've been doing this season. And if you haven't seen what that's about, basically I do all 16 Legendary campaign missions over the Witch Queen and Lightfall solo flawless, while utilizing all 15 available subclasses. So all 3 classes, all 5 subclasses. I cover each one of them on a different mission, and to add even more versatility and diversity to this quote-unquote build crafting series, I am not using any exotic weapon more than once, nor any weapons at all more than once. So that's 32 different legendary weapons and 16 different legendary exotics, 16 different legendary exotic armors. And you'll notice that this is actually my second time on Sunbreaker. That's because with 16 total missions and only 15 total subclasses, I have to use one subclass more than once. And so I chose for this series to do Sunbreaker again, albeit with a different exotic. The first video in the series was with Sunbreaker, but a syntheset build using Lament as well. So that's why I'm on Sunbreaker again, and the only other subclass that I haven't covered is Sentinel, Void Titan, and I'm saving that for desperate measures to face off against Callus. That'll be the next video in the series and the last one. So with all that said, and Season of Defiance coming to a close, I will go in depth into Sunbreaker and Loreley Splendor build and the weapons I'm using here. But I just want to give kind of I'll try to keep it somewhat short channel update as we finish this series and go into Season of the Deep, which, by the way, I didn't plan on completing the series before the season ended. It just worked out that way, which is kind of fitting because then I can start a fresh season with a fresh set of videos for you guys. So obviously with this channel, my aim is to eventually stream and do something where I can engage with chat, because I do like responding to comments in the comment sections, and I've seen a lot of familiar faces come around and be repeat commenters, and that's engaging to me, and I think it would be just a little bit more personalized to eventually be able to stream. But also increase the video quality for the YouTube content that I am doing. There's a lot I do not know about content creation, and especially video editing. I am naturally an artist. That's what I do by trade. Well, I'm an artist builder by trade, but part of doing creative work is learning the tools that you have to use to do that creative work. And so with making gaming content, I love making the thumbnails, taking the screenshots, doing what I can with the limited tools that I have. And I know that there's so much more that I can do and much better, especially on the video editing front. So, with all that said, this is a hobby for me. So for me to actually really get better at it and provide a better product, so to speak, to you guys, I obviously need the hobby to be worth my time. So part of my goal obviously is to get the trajectory here towards monetization. And I started this channel in August last year with 6 subscribers. I've already achieved the 4,000 plus watch hours required to get monetized. I'm just about halfway to 1,000 subscribers, which thank you so much for everybody that's subscribed since I started this channel. And yeah, the returning support and the returning faces and names in the comments section and whatnot is thank you very much. And with that said, there's actually a lot of returning viewers, which could be you. 1.5 thousand returning viewers, but not even a third of you are subscribed. So if you are a returning viewer, if you're seeing my videos in your feed because you watch similar content, or maybe you watched a couple of my videos, the algorithm is putting it in your feed, well, yeah, you might not have any reason to subscribe because you're just going to see my videos no matter what. But if you do subscribe, you may as well, because you're already watching my videos more than once, and then that way you won't miss any of my videos because they'll be more likely to be in your feed, and you won't have to go looking for it. Which ties into the statistics here that also 87% of my viewers aren't subscribed, 13% are, and I think that ratio could be a little more balanced towards 50-50. I know that's probably asking for too much, but why not? If you're a viewer, if you like the content, you know, a sub for me does a lot, and if you really do enjoy the content, it would help you out as well. So yeah, all the subs I really appreciate, and let's get that up to 1,000 subscribers so that I can start to do more with this channel. That would be awesome. And in the meantime, leave those likes, leave the dislikes, and then comment if there's something that you don't like in the video, or if you think I can improve on something. I'm always open to constructive criticism, and yeah, just leave it in the comments and I will probably respond to you because I have time and there aren't that many people commenting on my videos anyway. And then, so all that said, Season of the Deep is coming up. It's right around the corner. Like I said, I have a new series planned. It's going to be a spin-off of this series, build style / solo challenging content, and I think it is going to revolve a lot around boss encounters and maybe certain challenging encounters in general, but I want to make it focused on bosses, and I won't say much more about it. Otherwise, well, let's figure out exactly what I'm going to do, and I will let you guys know as soon as I know more about it. So back to the video. What are we doing here? I'm on Loreley Splendor. The great thing about this exotic is it allows you. Okay, well, basically, you get a healing rift with a barricade in the same action. That is one way to look at it. You get a warlock's healing rift with a barricade. Which, and by the way, this healing rift is giving you ability, energy, and regeneration at the same time that it's healing you. And that healing rift is your Sol Invictus sunspot. And the Loreley Splendor specific sunspot, I think, acts a little bit differently than the normal sunspots. Somebody can let me know if you know more about that than I do. But all I'm going to say is that you throw your barricade down, you get a sunspot, now you're healing while benefiting from a rally barricade and ability regeneration. So this allows you, with this build, to play a power position, to create power positions, and it allows you to fight from range better than other Sunbreaker builds, which may sound odd because so much of Sunbreaker is revolved around that. The throwing hammer and you just bonk your way through the mission. Throw your hammer, pick it up, throw your hammer, you know, bonk play style. And so what are you talking about? Why would I play a power position from range? Well, the reason why is because, yes, it is, a lot of Titan strength does revolve around Roaring Flames ×3 and Throwing Hammer. But it's not always practical to be running around throwing your hammer, and frankly, it's not always that exciting, because if you're just doing the same thing over and over again, that gameplay is going to get stale. It's going to turn you off of Solar Titan completely, and you just go play something else for something fresh. But you could just be playing Loreley Splendor the way that I think it is intended to be played, in a way that you can play it intelligently, which is to not just use it as a failsafe, you know, to save your life when you're critical on health, because that is how a lot of us are using Loreley Splendor. It is a get out of jail free card. It is an excuse to take risk, and play a little carefree. And I think that the strength of Loreley Splendor is it revolves mostly around you having control of when you get that power position, when you get that sunspot, when you get that restoration. You can control when you get the benefits of Loreley Splendor, and if you play it like that, your gameplay will get better and you will play the build better, because relying on dying to get health, because that's what it is, right? Every time your sunspot drops automatically, that's because you were about to die. That's because you would have died otherwise. And that just doesn't feel like a good way to get better at the game. And so if you could be the one that's in control of when to benefit from Loreley. So not only that, but Loreley Splendor is a freaking cool looking exotic. Probably one of the coolest on Titan. So there's that as well. Now, I'll go more into how I play Loreley Splendor. What am I talking about with power position and shooting from range and all this stuff on a bonk Titan? Well, I'll get into it more, but I want to cover the aspects and fragments. So, for the aspects, I'm using none other than Sol Invictus and Roaring Flames, and that's going to cover defense and offense, right? The sunspots, which I also get from Loreley Splendor, is providing me with the defense. It's giving me healing. Yeah, if an enemy walks into my sunspot, they're going to burn, so it does damage as well, but primarily your sunspots are for your survivability. And Roaring Flames just allows you to do a ton of ability damage by stacking ability kills. You get 3 ability kills, then you've got Roaring Flames procced, then you're doing way more damage with your abilities, primarily your throwing hammer. So these two aspects are just generally what you want to go with, because Consecration is a sprint to slide to activate a melee that is going to replace your throwing hammer or your hammer strike, and just it's a lot of setup, and you're giving up a lot of the foundation of the strengths of the build of Solar Titan just for this special melee, and then you don't have your throwing hammer anymore after you've executed it. So yeah, it's a heavy price to pay to use a whole aspect for a special melee that's really hard to use, or not very rewarding to use. And I feel the same way about almost all of the alternate melees that you have to sprint to slide, and also takes up a whole aspect. So then the fragments that I'm using Ember of Torches and Ashes are pretty much used on almost all of my solar builds. Most of you probably are as well, because Ember of Torches is what gives you Radiant, and while you're Radiant you do 25% more weapon damage. And Ember of Ashes applies more Scorch, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50% more Scorch, and Scorch stacks to enemies. And there's a big difference there. So Scorch stacks, once you reach 100 Scorch stacks, that is the threshold for setting off an ignition, which is a area of effect and high damage explosion. So that's how Scorch stacks work. Ember of Ashes helps you get to that threshold 50% faster, basically. And on top of that, the Scorch damage that you do is just Scorch over time. It's damage over time. So enemies that are scorched, whether they're setting off an ignition or not, they're on fire, they're being damaged over time. So you can't really go wrong with either of these fragments. If you, usually I've got at least one of them, if not one or the other, or I've got both. And in this case with Loreley Splendor, I'm using both. And then another fragment that I'm using here is Ember of Solace. And Solace is extending the time that I get Radiant and Restoration by 50% as well. So I think normally with Radiant and Restoration you get it for 8 seconds at base. With Ember of Solace you instead get 12 seconds. So it is a pretty substantial time buff for your buffs. And you could use Empyrean instead of Solace, or you could use both, but if you have Empyrean, I don't really feel like you need Solace. Empyrean is very good. I do think it is a -10 resilience penalty, but Empyrean favors ad clear and killing enemies, right? So Ember of Empyrean is basically Devour for solar, in the sense that you can refresh the timer on Radiant and Restoration by getting solar ability or solar weapon kills. So you just reset the timer constantly. So that would be generally speaking a better fragment than Solace if you're planning on just killing one enemy after the next. But if you're fighting a boss or champions or any chunky targets where you need to do sustained damage, or if you're playing from range, then Ember of Solace might benefit you more, and Ember of Empyrean might not benefit you at all, because you're just focused on one target. You're not refreshing your abilities off of ads. So that's why I use Solace here, is because I just get to do more boss damage. And then for the fourth and final fragment that I'm using, it's Ember of Singeing, and this is actually super key to Loreley Splendor in my experience, because it is going to give you more rally barricades, thus more sunspots, and you're just going to have better uptime, because every time you kill a scorched target, you're going to get your class ability energy replenished much faster, and it'll actually allow us to play like in a power position permanently by cycling our abilities and scorching targets. So it's kind of like what Thread of Mind is for Abeyant Leaps builds, right? So here we have, like on Strand, we have Abeyant Leaps, which is a class ability based exotic like Loreley Splendor, and then we have a fragment that does similar to Ember of Singeing. When you kill suspended targets, you get class ability energy, right? So with Abeyant Leaps, you can spam your barricades, suspend the targets, kill the targets, you got another barricade, suspend the targets, kill the targets. That's the loop. With Loreley Splendor, if you're playing it correctly, you can drop your barricade, heal, kill the targets, with scorch the targets, kill the targets. You have another barricade, heal, scorch. You know, you just do it over and over again. There are some other fragments that you might want to consider, but I'm not recommending them for Lorelei Splendor. Yes, there's we have like the new fragment Ember of Mercy and the new adjustment to Ember of Syrian, so that we can create fire sprites and get restoration from fire sprites. Those are two fragments that I use on Hunter, because Hunter doesn't have Sol Invictus. So remember, on Sunbreaker we have Sol Invictus, so we have restoration available from an aspect, which is a lot easier to get and more practical than a fragment. So the 4 fragments that I'm recommending here just make a lot of sense for Lorelei specifically. And then for abilities, I'm obviously using a Rally Barricade. Rally Barricade is just so much better. Towering Barricade, yes, it can save your life. You can block like 100% of damage. Use it to save your life. The problem with Towering Barricade is it is a slower cooldown, which means less Lorelei Splendor sunspots. But also, if you're going to engage with enemies from behind a Towering Barricade, you need to peek, strafe left or right, in and out of your barricade, which means that at least half of your body is exposed from head to toe, if not more. And at the same time, you're probably stepping out of your sunspot to actually peek out of your barricade. So with Rally Barricade, you can stand in the sunspot and heal and regenerate your abilities while playing on a head glitch, so only your head is exposed, and benefiting from reload speed for your weapons. So Rally Barricade, and it's a shorter cooldown, so it's just way better. And yeah, I know, but it might be counterintuitive to play a head glitch or like expose your head because it's the most critical part of your body, but this isn't an online first-person shooter like Call of Duty Warzone or Apex or whatever other competitive shooters there are, where you can actually have a valid concern about playing a head glitch, because then a sniper can just one-shot you and you're dead. The PvE in Destiny 2, the enemies aren't that smart. They're not that precise. I think basically, if you're behind a Rally Barricade, you can just expect that the enemies aren't going to shoot you in the head and kill you. It's like they don't know. They just think you're in cover. They're aiming for your feet or center mass. They don't know. Maybe a sniper might aim for your head. I don't know for sure, but just trust. You'll be fine behind a Rally Barricade, and it'll just be much better for the build. And then for grenades, I use fusion grenades or thermite grenades on Lorelei. Don't use a healing grenade. Healing grenades are great. I use them all the time if I'm running Syntheseps, but that's because I don't have like an automatic source of healing that I don't have to think about or engage with when I'm about to die. That's what you got on Lorelei Splendor. So you don't need a healing grenade because you have Lorelei to save your butt. Fusion grenades make sense for the ritual because there are floating wizards and moving targets, and Savathun is moving around all over the place. So and fusion grenades have a quicker cooldown as well, which is a nice bonus compared to thermite grenades. But the reason why I suggest thermite grenades for a lot of different things as well is because if you're playing Lorelei correctly and you're playing in a power position behind your barricade, benefiting from your sunspot, for grounded enemies and charging enemies, thermite grenades are extremely good. Like, imagine an unstoppable is heading towards you and you're sitting there behind your cover. You can put a thermite grenade down that is going to connect a pathway from you to the unstoppable and the Unstoppable is just going to walk through that pathway of solar fire the whole time, and he is going to ignite because he's going to be taking the entirety of the damage of the thermite grenade. So they can be a little bit tricky to use, but if you use them correctly, they're very good grenades. I prefer them over solar grenades. I'm not really huge on the solar grenades because they're not like vortex grenades on Void. They don't pull you in and trap you. It's easy for enemies to walk in and out of, so it's very hard to damage enemies with the entirety of a solar grenade, unless they're stationary. But yeah, and then obviously I'm using throwing hammer. Hammer strike is good for ignitions, but you know, it's not refundable after every use, and it doesn't give you cure when you pick it up. And then yeah, throwing hammer is just the way. It's easier to stack up roaring flames, it's easier to keep radiant going, it's easier to keep restoration going. So yeah. Now, how to actually play Lorelei. So I've talked a bit about playing behind cover, all this. The loop that I use to play Lorelei is basically you set up a power position, like I said. You get radiant right away, and you throw your grenade. Or you can throw your grenade and then throw your hammer. Either way, you drop your barricade, you dump your abilities, which is actually important to do. Even if you don't think you need to use your abilities, just drop your barricade, dump your abilities, because once you do that, you'll be radiant, so you'll be able to do more weapon damage, but you're also going to be regenerating your abilities much faster from the Lorelei Sunspot. So if you didn't dump your abilities, say you're still holding on to your grenade, then all that ability energy that you're getting from your Sunspot is kind of going to waste. You're not using Lorelei to its full potential. And also, you're not going to proc Ember of Singeing if you're not scorching targets. So drop your barricade, dump your abilities, get that scorch going on the enemy. You'll have another barricade up and ready before your barricade is even expired. You're still going to be standing in your Sunspot by the time your next barricade is going to be ready. Yeah, shoot your weapons. You're going to be doing 25% more damage because of Radiant, and you're going to have additional reload speed because of the Rally Barricade. And then, like I said, you have another barricade ready, so you can choose, are you going to stay there or are you going to move? If you stay, you can keep cycling that over and over again. Barricade, dump abilities, weapon, barricade, no, just do it over and over. If you're going to move, I would rely on being the Bonk Titan that you are, and use that throwing hammer, go kill 3 ads, get your Roaring Flames ×3 going, use your hammer as a solar pathway to get to your next power position, because that's basically what you can do. You kill enemies, there's fire on the ground, there's sunspots, you're healing, you're making orbs from heavy-handed, which means you're collecting armor charge. Then when you get to your next power position, you drop your barricade, you got armor charge, you got 22% more damage from triple surge mods on your weapon, along with the radiant. So you can see how that works. So, and then you just rinse and repeat. Basically, that is basically the gameplay loop that I use. And yeah, so I'm like, throwing hammer is a key component, but you also have to don't be shy about throwing your hammer and dumping it. When you put that barricade down to get in a position, just forget about picking up your hammer, because you're going to have another one back up and ready before you know it from that sunspot. Just use your throwing hammer and rely on picking it up when you're like transitioning from one position to the next. So then the combat mods that I'm using, heavy-handed, like I said, it's just so easy to make orbs because you always have throwing hammer, you always have your charged melee kills. Also, you may as well take advantage of the fact while you're at it to use hands-on if you can afford it. Not that I think any build needs super regeneration. Like, your build should not revolve around your super because you can never count on your super. No matter how fast you can get your super, you can't count on it. You can only count on your super for certain instances where it's up and ready. But because throwing hammer is so free and easy, if you use hands-on on your helmet, then you're gonna have your super pretty much. Well, you'll have it more often, which is just a good thing. But I'm not gonna say it's always there because it's not. You're just gonna have it more often. And then I also use 1-2 finisher often. So if I do lose my hammer when I'm transitioning from position to position, then hopefully I've got 3 stacks of armor charge, and I can just do a finisher on an enemy, and then I got my hammer back. Because it is a good thing to be able to. Well, I should say it can be a bad thing if you lose your hammer when you're used to having your hammer, because you might forget that while you have your hammer, you're also healing, you're getting cure, you're getting restoration, you're making sunspots. If you lose your hammer, then you just lost your safety. And then you have to adapt, and you have to make a decision at that point to go and play behind hard cover or be more careful. And it could slow your gameplay down too, right? So if you're not quick enough to make those decisions, or if you don't want your gameplay to be slowed down, just put 1-2 finisher on your class item, and you know, that can help you get your hammer back when you really need it. And then damage resistance wise, with melee builds, I pretty much always use melee damage resistance, because being up close and personal with enemies, like you will be using throwing hammer, is risky regardless of how much healing you get. No matter the subclass, just being closer to the enemies is generally more dangerous than being far away from the enemies. So melee damage resistance is actually more important than like sniper resistance ever is on any build. But especially so on melee based builds, because it's part of your gameplay, it's part of your build is to get in enemies' faces and dominate that way. So that'll help keep you alive even more. I will say weapon reloaders aren't super necessary here, because you've got a rally barricade to reload your weapons super fast for you. And when you're doing ad clear and moving from position to position, you should be using your throwing hammer anyways, which is infinitely renewable and provides you with many benefits. So don't use your weapons if you don't have to when you're doing ad clear. Just use your hammer. So that's where, you know, weapon reloaders on your combat mods might be a little bit inefficient or not very useful. And I say this because at the end of a couple of my videos ago, I think it was the Night Stalker one, I went over to a degree that I believe like the combat mod section is where you marry your build with your weapons. So you base your build based off of the exotic that you're using, the subclass, the aspects of fragments, the abilities, how that ties into the exotic armor. And then you pick your weapons based off of that, and you make everything meet in the middle with the combat mod / buildcrafting 2.0 section, right? That's what your combat mods are for. They're not going to make your build, they're not going to make your weapons, it's just going to make everything work together a little bit better. That's just slight optimizations. But basically, why I'm saying this is because I feel like Destiny does a very good job at being a 50-50 RPG slash first-person shooter. It's very balanced between ability spam and weapon gameplay. And so if you go 50-50 on your combat mods, I think it makes sense. You know, focus about 50% of your combat mod energy on weapons, on armor stats like resilience and discipline, etc. And like hands-on, which I'm using here, 1-2 finisher, anything that buffs your abilities basically. And then the other 50% you can use towards like reloaders, reserves, scavengers, ammo finders, weapon surge mods, etc. But yeah, so then that leads me to Gjallarhorn. I haven't even talked about that yet. Why am I using Gjallarhorn? You know, it's so overused. Well, it has been nerfed anyway, and it's Gjallarhorn's actually new to me. I don't know if I had it in Destiny 1 or not, but I definitely remember it from Destiny 1. And I only got Gjallarhorn, I think, well, I got it a season ago or two from Grasp. But I just got the Catalyst recently, so now it feels usable to me, and I enjoy using it. But yeah, it's an easy, excellent burst damage solar exotic. Does it have tracking or not? I always thought it did have tracking, but I don't hear the tracking module audio cues when I aim down sight. But I do feel like anytime I shoot a Gjallarhorn, even if it hits the enemy or not, something's getting damaged somewhere. So that could just be the wolf pack rounds. But yeah, anyways, and it's got, so the catalyst basically gives it clown cartridge, so you've got 2 in the mag, which is really good for damage. And then obviously it's a support weapon as well, like what Divinity is for precision based damage, Gjallarhorn is for rockets, right? So if you're doing raid or dungeon boss damage and people want to use rockets, well, you better have somebody using Gjallarhorn, because it's going to provide wolf pack rounds to all allied rocket launchers, which is insane. So, and it's the perfect target for Savathun, because Savathun is a giant floating target that does not like to be shot in the head. And I know because I've used Cataclysmic plenty of times on Savathun, so she's pretty dodgy, which means that you could be wasting your 4th times charm, not proccing it, or missing out on some bait and switch damage. Gjallarhorn's it's just very easy to use against Savathun. Yeah, and then the fusion rifle I'm using. So I put what's it called? It's the one from the season that you can get at the war table. I put Grave Robber and Swashbuckler on it specifically for solar melee builds only, because I use Sunbreaker a lot with Bonk, and Gunslinger a lot with like a knife trick build. Grave Robber and Swashbuckler works really well for that. Free reloads, and it's the highest amount of damage that you can get on this weapon. So you kill something with your melee, then you do 33 or 35% more damage, which is good. And I know what the preferred god roll is for this weapon, and it's unique, and how unique it is, because you can get Envious Assassin and Reservoir Burst on it, which I do plan on crafting a second version of this with those perks, because Envious Assassin can overflow the mag up to 150%. So like you could basically get all your reserves in one single mag, and that is going to make almost all of your reserves Reservoir Burst shots without having to reload, which is nutty. And that would be good for boss damage, for backup damage, you know, if you're out of heavy ammo, and just universal ad clear, because you can use it on any subclass. Incandescent would be good on it as well with Solar Scorch builds. But yeah, fusion rifle is just they're just really good at nuking yellow bars. Yeah, they excel at that, kind of like how shotguns do, but they have more range than a shotgun. So yeah. And then I'm using Smite of Merain, which is the King's Fall pulse rifle. It's just a primary. It's just a pulse rifle, nothing crazy there. But because it's a raid weapon, it's craftable with double damage perks. So Focused Fury and Vorpal makes it pretty good. Not too bad whenever I need to use it, which is hardly ever. But yeah, that should pretty much wrap up the video. I had some other builds that I wanted to talk about, other potential Sunbreaker builds, like Phoenix Cradle. You could do something similar to Loreley, but you know, instead of having healing just for yourself, you can heal your whole team. Done lots of Syntheseps builds for Solar. I wanted to talk about Consecration because it's an unused aspect, and despite how poor I think it is, I have some ideas about how a build can go with it, where you don't have to use Throwing Hammer, but I'll get more into that if I do decide to make a video. Anyways, if you made it through this long, again, I'd appreciate a like, sub, comment, and hope you enjoyed. I will see you in the next video. Take care.
Now, we prepare for the witness and stop the next collapse.